Hello. Is there anybody there? Can you hear me alright, Alistair? Is the volume okay? I think there may be some lag, so what I'm saying is taking a little bit of time to come through. But I'll get started. Thanks very much for logging in, guys. I know it's Easter and that. You probably got full bellies. I know I've got my way through some of the kids' chocolate already. So I'm going to start by basically going over some of the questions that I missed last Sunday. So the first one I've got here is from Ben Worley. How often do flies on social media catch more anglers than fish? I like that one because I'm guilty as the next man of doing some social media fishing with fly patterns. I try and tie flies that are fishing flies, but also appealing to people that want to look at them. The sad truth of the matter is that flies that catch a lot of fish are actually pretty boring to look at in pictures. I mean, basic hare's ear patterns, very dull, boring flies are what are, my box is full of them sort of things. But unfortunately, it's a bit of a game with social media. You've got to post interesting, colourful flies. Some of them are effective, some not so much. So I think the answer to your question, Ben's definitely yes. I think some of the flies on social media are fantastic for catching anglers and not so much for the fish. I've just got to keep taking my glasses on and off to read the screen to see who's here. Hi Colin, Elios, Jane, why are you out the kitchen? Get the Sunday dinner made. Okay, I'll move on to the next question then. Another question that might be useful to know is at what point should you tie in tippet when you should throw your leader away? So I think, I'm not quite sure what you mean. That's from Jason King. I think what you mean by that is how many wind knots will you tolerate before you've got to get rid of the leader. So it depends. So as you all know, I used to compete quite a bit, and in a competition, I would change my leader immediately. If it had a wind knot in it, I just know that it wasn't worth my while catching a fish that could be really valuable to me, and I know that it's been lost through my bad management of my leaders. So the less competitions I do, the more tolerant I am of the odd wind knot here and there, and if I lose a fish, I'm not so worried. But it just depends on how badly you want to catch that fish. And the scenario I would give you, Jason, is imagine you've caught the fish of a lifetime, you know there's a wind knot in your leader, and it snaps. I mean, how gutted would you be? You'd be on that giant pillar, wouldn't you? Making it sodden because you're crying your eyes out because you didn't change your leader when you knew there was a wind knot there. So yeah, I would advocate changing your leader when you know there's a problem with it. If it's kinked up or you've got a wind knot, you need to really change your leader over. Okay, I'll move on to the next one. Just let me see. Chris, I'll get to the other questions as soon as I finish reading these ones, if that's okay. So the next one's from Nicholas Boer. Hi Lindsay, could you explain the different leader setups you would use for lake fishing depending on types of fly lines and techniques? Thank you, great channel, keep it up. I think I answered that question last week, Nicholas. So if you want to jump onto last week's video, you should be able to see the answer to that. It was a pretty long drawn out answer because it wasn't one of them easy ones. It was different weather, different circumstances required different leaders. So the full answer's on that other video. So the next one's another question from DCG. Hi Lindsay, what sighter material do you use when nymphing? Brand and diameter. That's a good question. I used to use the Hanak bicolour indicator. They also do a tricolour indicator now that's very good. But what I've got used to doing now is I'm using a hand French leader, and I use the coloured waxes. And what you can do is you can mark up your leader with the waxes, and that's what I'm using currently, and I quite like it. Doesn't make me catch any more fish, I don't think, but I just like the simplicity of it. What you've got to remember to do with the waxes is to keep them in your pocket or keep them on the car heater, to just keep them moist, because if you don't, they're not so good when they're cold. So yeah, them waxes are good, and I did do a little review on nymphing indicators. If you want to search the channel, there's a whole video on indicators for nymphing. Okay, thanks for the question. The next question, this is a cracker actually. I would ask you another question. Neil Y, I'm not sure his surname. I have been over the past few years been my club champion. Well done, Neil. And very keen to know how to get involved in competitions. You have obviously competed quite a bit over the years in these types of competitions. Do you still compete to a high level, or do you slow down a little? A heads up on the competition scene would be appreciated, as a very keen river angler. So thanks for that question, Neil. It's a really good question, and I'm a big fan of competition fishing, and the reason for that is if you're just getting into fly fishing and you want to improve quickly, there is no better way of doing that than to enter local club competitions, and certainly as you go along you can get into higher level competitions. So there's qualifiers for, and I'll just focus on rivers because the loch style is a bit different, but there's qualifying events for river competitions throughout the country that are organised, and you can get that off the Angling Trust TEF website. The dates, obviously it's not happening this year unfortunately, but generally you'll get it off the Angling Trust websites. Now there was a few different aspects to your question there. So I've only been river fishing for about 15 years actually, and I just did it initially for something to do in the winter while the loch style season was kind of closed down. But it's kind of taken over my life, the rivers. I absolutely love it. It's a great excuse to travel to other countries, and I've seen some fantastic landscapes. I mean, there's nowhere quite like Slovenia in May. The rivers are amazing. So you've got to balance it up, and I've digressed, sorry. So competitions. So I did the competitions to national level for a number of years. I did 5 nationals on the River Tees, a couple of times on the River Dart, and a couple of times on the River Dee. Now, if you want to go to national level, you'll be competing with rules that are IFFA rules. Now, they're a lot different from what the rest of the world does. So the rest of the world kind of fishes to rules called Fipsmush. So IFFA rules, the major differences are fly size, and the other thing is it's like an open venue sort of thing. So the beats aren't pegged. The competitors have got, for the River D example, you've got sections, but there may be seven of you or 8 of you in the flight, and what happens is you run like a maniac to your spot. Then there's maybe 2 or 3 good spots in that flight, and then you've got anglers coming up they've got the right to challenge you. So you've then got 30 minutes to fish that spot. It's all a bit of a nonsense if I'm honest, because if somebody's challenged you, it's kind of like a joke challenge, if you know what I mean, because if they do come back after 30 minutes, you'll have trashed that piece of river, and they won't be able to get any fish out of it. So it seems a bit pointless to me. But that's competition fishing for you. I have learned a massive amount from just controlling some of. I've been lucky enough to control some of the best anglers in the country. I've watched Howard Croston fishing, John Tyzak, Andrew Scott, Simon Robinson. I mean, the list is endless. It is probably the quickest way to get good at fishing is enter competitions. I hope that answers your question, kinda, Neil. It's a massive subject, and I could go on for hours about it, but obviously other people want to ask some bits and bobs. I mean, if you want to phone me, I can bore you to death for hours on competition fishing. Anyway, let's have a look, see what we've got else. So, my wife sent my chocolate egg. Oh, well, thanks for that. What's your favourite river and loch lake? That's a good question, Chris. So, favourite loch lake? It's got to be Rutland Water. I mean, Rutland Water's it's a massive venue, and it's not always the best place to go fishing because it can be a hard mistress. And I've had some really rough days on Rutland, and sometimes you can feel like there's not a fish in the lake. But there is something special about Rutland. It's just got character, bags of character, and generally you will always find somewhere, regardless of how hard the fishing is, you will find somewhere, if you're prepared to motor around and travel, you'll find someone on the lake that is fishing, and you can always maybe grind 1 or 2 out. That said, I've had my fair share of blank days on Rutland Water, and other people would say, oh well, the fishing at Farmoor's far better, or the fishing at Gratham's far better, and often that is the case if you're just going for the fishing. But if you're going for the scenery and the atmosphere of the place, I don't think you can beat Rutland Water. In England, there's other fantastic fisheries around the country. I mean, the Lake of Menteith is a firm favourite of mine when I get a chance to get up there. I've only ever fished Loch Leven on a few occasions, but that's pretty special as well. River-wise, I've got to say the Socha in Slovenia. It's there's nowhere quite like it, and I've been to lots of different places. There's not a river in the UK that can hold a candle to the Socha. In the UK, I love the River Avon because it's my local, but I've got to say there's something quite special about the River Tees. It's a wild place, and you really feel like you're in the outdoors with it. I absolutely love going fishing up on the Tees. I mean, you're not going to catch monster trout up there by any stretch, but you'll catch lots of trout, and they're more than keen to come up to the top for them. So you go up there with your dry flies and have a great time. So yeah, the River Tees in this country, the River Socha in Slovenia. I hope that answers your question, Chris. Give us a look at your fly box then, Lindsay. I'll tell you what, Ian, I have got a couple of boxes I'm working on. Bear with me. dare say this is the one you want to see. I'll show you it quickly if the camera will allow me. There we go. Hello Jock, how are you? Oh, hope you didn't see that fly box there. This is a wee box I've been working on. A wee river box, just to pass the time really. While we've been on lockdown, I've been toying with this one off and on. It's some dries, some wets, and some nymphs. Hi Sasha, are you alright? Yeah, little flies. It's going to be a sort of all-round box. So often my fishing consists of an hour here and an hour there on the river, because I do quite a bit of business down that part of the world, and so often I only get an hour or maybe 2 hours, and so I just take one box, and this is going to be the box for when I do get back fishing, if I get back fishing. I hope that's not helpful, Ian, is it, showing you the top 10 box and it's empty? That top 10 box actually is what we do when we go away and practice for these lock style matches. On the practice day, the team will come together at the end, we'll all pick out the best flies for the day, and then we all stick them in a top 10 box. So that's why it's empty, because we've not been fishing basically. Let's have a look. Alistair, why is there a fly limit size in comps? Ooh, I don't know, mate. You would have to ask the organisers. And this goes to the rules of being different. So the rest of the world fits moosh. I don't think there is a fly size limit. They just fish flies that they think will catch fish. IFFA rules. Well, there's the size limits there. So it's 5/8 of an inch is the hook size, and the overall size is 15/16 of an inch. I don't know how well you can see that actually. It's a bit faded now. It's an old card, but yeah, I don't think it makes much odds. People go on about fishing oversized flies. I know they're huge on it in Scotland. I mean, people get checked all the time for fly sizes, which is a good thing. They're enforcing the rules, which is good. But does it make much of a difference? I often catch more fish on smaller flies than I do on bigger size. I tie a lot of my flies for competition much smaller than the permitted size. It just depends on your confidence, I suppose. It's I've fished a lot of competitions in the past, and I'm very confident with smaller flies. It doesn't put me up or down. That said, I have been fishing quite a bit, pleasure fishing with snakes, and that's great fun. Fish just hammer that. I've had some real good sport with that last year and this year. So I hope that answers your question, Alistair. The truth of the matter is I don't really know why there's a set fly size. Stop people using snakes in competition, I suppose. What's your favourite fly to tie? Ugh. You know what, I love tying dry flies. I really enjoy it. I think you feel like you're tying a fly. But the sad truth of the matter is the flies that catch fish tend to be blobs. They're boring to tie, but they're so effective. I tie a lot of blobs. I've got a lot of blobs in my boxes. Despite what you see on the YouTube channel and Facebook, it would be kind of boring if I just posted pictures of the last blob I tied. But yeah, dry flies. I love tying dry flies, and in particular, I really enjoy tying a parachute Adams, because each one is like a little challenge to me. I try and get it better than the last one I've tied. So yeah, parachute Adams is probably my favourite fly to tie. Hi Reese, what type of pattern given you the most enjoyment in fly tying? Oh, I've just answered that, I suppose. parachute Adams, but I don't tend to stick to recipes, and that's probably why my fly tying isn't as good as it should be. So, you know, people putting up traditional patterns like the Bloody Butchers and Dabblers, actually, for that matter. It's quite a technical fly. I tied a dabbler recently, actually, for the channel, and I really enjoyed doing that. It's just nice to see something coming together like that. But I enjoy fly tying full stop. So, and I like being inventive with it. So it's good that, you know, you can make up with the materials you've got. There's no need really to go out and buy set items to tie a particular fly. You just make do with what you've got. I mean, that's what I do. I mean, don't get me wrong, I've got a lot of stuff now because over the years I've spent quite a bit of money building up my fly tying kit, and every time I go fishing to Rutland or anywhere else there's a shop, I'm just a sucker. In I go, my wallet comes out, my credit card starts melting, my wife goes ballistic. So yeah, I'm a sucker for new fly tying stuff, and I love seeing new stuff coming on the market. I'm a Fritz mug, I don't mind admitting that. So, you know, F&F, I probably funded his next car. He brings out some new Fritz, and I'm away buying it. So I hope that answers your question, Paul. If you could only use 3 flies on still water, what would you pick? That's from Blackfur 2. That's an easy one. Anyway, number 1's an easy one. The candy floss booby. I don't think it's any secret that that's my favourite fly on the reservoir. I get a bit of stick for it, actually. The only person that probably fishes the candy floss more than me is Jock Kettles. They call it Jock's dry fly and Jock's nymph. He uses it quite a bit, but it's just the reason the candy floss is number 1, 2 and 3 probably, is it'll catch fish all year round. So it doesn't matter what part of the year it is, or what's happening on the water. The candy floss booby will catch you fish all the time. The other flies, if I had to name two other patterns, would be the cruncher. I think it's a fantastic fly. It just imitates so much. You can fish it on different lines, deep or up in the surface. So the cruncher would be my number 2, and my number 3 would have to be the Midas for dry fly fishing, and it would be a flip of a coin between the Midas and the hopper. I find them really effective flies when the fish are up in the surface. So I hope that answers your question, Paul. Do you always fish barbless? Gordon Simpson. Yes, so I went to Barbless hooks about getting on 6-7 years ago, and the reason I did that, actually, I'll not lie to you, it wasn't for fish welfare or anything like that. I just thought that competition fishing was going to go down that route, and as it happens, I've been proved right. You know, all my river fishing's been done barbless from when I started river fishing, but on the loch style front, I think now most competitions are catch and kill 3 or 4 fish, and then you're returning 10, and you must go to barbless hooks or crush down the barbs. I would suggest that a crushed down barb hook is not even remotely as effective as a manufactured barbless hook. I hope that answers your question, Gordon. Mark Wallace, is there any benefit of using different types of deer hair, elk? So many to choose from now. Yep, I think you're right, Mark, and you've got to be very careful where you get your fly tie materials from. I use a couple of trusted suppliers that I know I'm going to get really good gear from, you know, and I stick with them. I have ordered stuff. I don't buy stuff off eBay. I used to do a lot of, there's a lovely deer hair patch on eBay, and then it arrives and actually it's CAC. So I tend to stick to the same suppliers, and I've always had pretty good service from them, to be fair. I like coastal deer hair for most of my stuff. I'm not that keen on elk. I find the stuff I've had has been pretty brittle and it breaks away a bit too quickly. So I hope that answers your question there. Hi Jim. I think we're all surviving the lockdown so far. Reese, be great to hear your camera setup for fly tying. So Reese, I take it you mean the videoing. Well, what I'm using currently is I'm using a I should know this really. I'm using a Lumix G80 camera, and I've got in that a 32 gigabyte SD card, and I kind of flirt between a boom mic attached to the camera, or I've got a lav mic that I sometimes feed into the camera and clip onto my shirt. Now I'm not quite sure which one gives the best sound. Currently for this video I'm using this mic that I just bought for doing the live streaming. Unfortunately the other hardware that I bought to do live streaming didn't turn up in time for today's broadcast, but in the future I'm going to be able to live stream with the camera I'm using for the fly tying, which is the Lumix G80. Setting up, so the lens is just a kit lens, and what I do is I've got to work with a vise quite far away from me, which is quite awkward, to get closer to the lens so that you can see it. But yeah, so in answer to your question, the Lumix G80, I have got a macro lens for that, but I tend to use that just for the photography. So I hope that answers your question, Reese. Dad hoarding his fly tying supplies like a dragon hoards gold. Sasha, get off the feed. Jock, Jock Kettles, a question from my old pal. How do you rate fishing for your country compared to fishing other big competitions? Jock, that's not a fair question, is it? Well, if any of you that know me, I've probably realised that I am Scottish, but I have fished for England in the loch style teams, so I don't do it anymore, and there's a number of reasons for that I won't go into them all, but one of the main reasons is it's not Scotland. I've got to be honest, I could have just kept going with the loch style and represented England, but it's not quite the same. And you know, when I've been to these matches, the international matches, don't get me wrong, I've felt very proud and I've loved fishing for England. I've been involved with some fantastic teams, but you know, watching Phil Thomas walking down to the boats crying his eyes out with pride, all the jocks singing Flower of Scotland, it nips at your heartstrings. So I couldn't tell you what it's like to fish for your country, but fishing for England was great fun, and I got a lot out of fishing for them teams. I know you were supposed to captain the team this year, Jock, I believe. I'm gutted for you, pal, but I'm sure you'll do a grand job when it's all back on next year. And you never know, you might be able to take a wee cup. You might see that one behind me. Oh. Thanks for the question, Jock. A bit unfair, but thanks. Okay. I just noticed you have the Kit Kat cup behind you. I do! That is the Kit Kat cup behind me. I've not had it engraved this year yet, but I will do. Clive. Hi Lindsay, what is your favourite buzzer of all time, colour and size? That's an easy one, Clive. My favourite buzzer is the Barker buzzer, and there's a little video on my channel showing you how to tie that. Now I think I've tied that on a size 10, but my favourite size is 12. It's simple. It's a simple quilled buzzer. It's very plain, and I use sunburst cheeks on it and just a black head, and that's caught me more fish buzzer fishing than any other, without a doubt. And you know, people would say, well, what other buzzers do you try? And the honest answer is not many. I tend to, if I'm fishing buzzers, I'll have 4 of them on my cast in different sizes. The heaviest one on the point, size 10, and then 312s above it. I hope that answers your question, Clive. You're welcome, Reese. Hi, Lindsay. When buying peacock eyes, how can you tell if the feather will produce well-marked quills? Robert, I no longer buy the peacock eyes like I used to. I tend to buy the pre-stripped quills, and the ones I get are either Troutline's own brand, or I get the Polish quills. And not always, but generally they have really good banding and marking on them, and they work really well. So yeah, the days of me stripping down peacock eyes to get stripped herald is finished. I mean, at a push, if I want something specific, because I have got some eyes that I've bought in the past that were dyed, if I don't have them, I will sit with my fingers and just strip away some herald, and just to make it work. But yeah, I generally nowadays I buy them. I hope that answers your question, Robert. Okie dokie. Is there any other questions? I'll just have a wee drink of water. Right, I think, oh, what's this? What's your top 3 types of feathers for tying? I'll tell you what I couldn't do without is partridge. That would be my number 1. I love partridge. It's a great feather, versatile. I use it on lake flies, river flies. It's just a really versatile feather, and I go through them. I like partridge. The next thing I would say, and we're talking feathers because if you said materials, Fritz would have to appear in that. I like tying with foam, booby eyes, some certain river patterns, but they're not feathers. So feather wise, marabou, couldn't do without marabou, and probably pheasant tail would be my my other sort of go-to sort of feather that I would use for tying. Okay, right, how long's that been going? Is that about half an hour? Feels like I've been here all day. It's because I have been here all day, worrying that this won't work. How do you tie in your deer hair so neatly? Well, thanks for that question, Ben. It's a matter of practice, really, but I think the mistake a lot of people make with the deer hair is they take too much. So they're trying to use too much deer hair initially, and very often they've not left enough room at the front of the fly. So it then becomes extremely difficult to get a neat head with the deer hair. But use a lot less than you think you need. And the other tip I would give you is make sure that you've got a lot of wax onto your thread, because that really helps when you're tying in deer hair. I'm by no means a master of deer hair, but I enjoy tying with it. I really would like to start tying a bit more muddler patterns and stuff, and it's something I've played about with, but the problem is I tie because I need to tie flies to fish with, and I don't really use muddlers. I much prefer to use boobies if I need a disturbance pattern to rip across the surface. I would much rather tie a booby on than a muddler. I hope that answers your question, pal. Reese, bit of fun, your bogey fly. a popular pattern that everyone swears by, but for whatever reason, you've never caught a fish on it. We all have one. What's yours? Thanks for that, Reese. I've got more than one, pal. I can't seem to catch fish on any of the flies I tie on. Bogey fly. A lot of my pals, they swear by cormorants, and one in particular, Del Spry, he's a fantastic angler. He's a great guy, and we've fished in many teams together. And you know, as I'm motoring up because I'm having a hard time, and I look across the Del and I can see 100 yards away what he's doing, I know he's going to say to me, I'm using cormorants, and for me, that's the bogey fly, cormorants. I tie them in all different flavours because I can't get bloody one of them to work properly. So yeah, the cormorants, the bogey fly for me. I know one of my other pals, Andy Everett, he can't catch fish on the candy. So you know, it's probably a confidence thing. I just need to go out, fish it more, get some confidence in it, and then that whole bogey fly thing would disappear, you know. I hope that answers your question, Reese. Thanks very much. Robert Ross Skugel. When fishing competitions, what are the main fly lines to have in your bag? I take it you mean loch style competitions, Robert. And you know, you ask any sort of competition angler that's been around for 5 or 6 years, and they've got a minimum of about 30 lines in their box. I don't know anybody that doesn't carry at least 25 lines, and that might seem excessive, and you know, a lot of the times you'll probably only use 5 or 6, and the idea of carrying them extra lines is if your boat partner starts to turn you inside out with a line that you might not normally use. So for example, a few years ago, the Cortland Ghost Tip, we all had it in our boxes. I hate the line, I think it hinges terribly, but I had it in my box because the rest of the team had it in their box, and sure enough, on that occasion, that was the line that just worked. There's just some days where if you haven't got the right line on, you're just not catching fish. So it pays to have, you know, a big array of lines into your box. Now, if you're just starting out, the essential lines you must have, I would say, is a floater, a midge tip, a slow glass, a fast glass, a DI3, a DI5, and a DI7 at a bare minimum. If you're going to competition fish, that's what I would suggest you have as a bare minimum. I hope that's giving you a steer. Trevor, how are you, Trevor? Hi Lindsay, I fish a small water around 10 feet in depth. What length of leader would you recommend for straight line nymphing with 2 flies, please? That's a good question, Trevor. I don't do a lot of still water fishing, small waters, but if I did, I would say that a good length of leader for that would be around 15 feet, and I would have on my point the heaviest fly or the bigger fly, nymph wise, and then maybe 7 feet up from that I would have the other fly, and then 7 or 8 feet to your fly line. And I think that would be the best setup for 2 flies on a lake that's around 10 foot deep. 8.5 pound breaking strain, depending on what kind of fish you've got in that lake. I hope that answers your question, Trevor. Dewey Jones, have you ever tried tying a mallard and claret spider? No, I haven't, but now you've mentioned it, sounds like it could work. I don't think that, you know, people go on about purple and snipe and, you know, partridge and orange. I think it's more to do with the profile. Obviously these colour combinations have been proved over the years, but I think the profile is much more important than the colours. I dare say a mallard and claret spider would work a treat. Thanks for the question. My wife just said I need to go out fishing more. She's right. Much more, actually. Jeffrey, have you read the works of Swisher and Richards, and have you tied and fished these simple patterns? I'm sorry, Jeffrey, I haven't, and I'm going to be perfectly honest, I don't know who these people are, but I'll certainly have a look. When I come off here, I'll go on and check them out. Thanks for giving me the heads up. NFW trout flies. Lindsay, what is your top dry fly you use and in what hook size? The top dry fly, well, it depends on where I'm fishing, but my local river, it's the River Avon, it's a chalk stream, and the fish are an absolute sucker for a parachute Adams size 16 and 18, just all day, no bother at all. I hope that answers your question, pal. Mark Wallace, rubber soles, felt or studs for waders, and do you treat CDC once wet? Thanks, Mark. Number of questions there. So when I started, I used felt soled waders, and for the River Avon that was great. And then I was only a year into river fishing, and my friend invited me along to Slovenia to go and fish there, and they don't permit felt soles, so I had to go and buy a pair of rubber soles. And since then, well, 15 years ago now, I've not looked back, so I've always stuck with rubber soles. And I stick tungsten studs in, which has been ample. But last year I went up to the River Tees because me and a couple of my pals were supposed to fish a new competition that Scott Nellens is organising for teams of 3, and we went up to practice on the Tees, and I had fished the Tees a few times, but I never recalled it being as dangerous as it was last year. It was extremely slippy, and I ended up buying the rock treads. So I don't know if you've seen them. They're like giant washers, if you like, and I deliberated over it for a long time because they were really expensive. I think they were about £35 or something like that, but a lot of money for something you're going to screw into the base of your rubber soled wading boots. But they were absolutely superb, and you definitely needed a wading staff, and I would thoroughly recommend if you've got dodgy wading on freestone rivers, then rock treads are really good. On the River Avon, I use different boots, and I just have normal studs in because, you know, it's old man fishing the River Avon. It's the banks are all manicured, and the wading's pretty easy, so I don't much worry about my footwear. Thanks very much for the question. Oh, sorry, do I treat CDC when it's wet? Let me just get that question again. Yeah, do you treat CDC when it's wet? What I tend to do is dry. I've got a little pad on my waistcoat, and so I'll dry the fly with that initially, and then I treat it with Hunt's Original, the dust. The powder's fantastic. It just dries the fly out, quick blow, and you're back in action. So yeah, I do treat CDC flies once they've been wetted, but once they've been in a fish's mouth a couple of times, I tend to just change the fly. That's the simplest thing to do. Always pays to have a number of CDC patterns with you rather than risk, not stopping catching fish. I hope that answers your question. And there we go, I've got to the end of the questions again. Well, that's getting on 40 odd minutes, guys, and I'm sure I must be boring you to tears. I'm boring myself to tears. And if I don't get home soon, all my chocolate eggs are going to be eaten. My kids are like locusts, I swear to God. I hope you enjoyed that. It's difficult to get a gauge on how well doing the live stream works. Do you prefer the live stream? Do you prefer it pre-recorded? Obviously, with a live stream, what you see is what you get. If I don't know, I don't know. Whereas with the pre-recorded stuff, it gives me a chance to do a bit of research. So if I'm unsure of an answer, I can check it out. But I'll put a little poll up in the community part of the site, and we'll just see what you think. If you'd like me to do more live streaming, happy to do so. If you want me to do pre-recorded questions, I'm happy to do that as well. But what I'm hoping to do is, once the hardware arrives from Amazon, they're running pretty slow at the minute with everything that's happening. I'm hoping to do some live streaming of tying flies, which is what I want to do. Not only that, the kit will give me the ability to do fly tying demonstrations to clubs and stuff. So, just let me know what you want to see, guys, and I'll do my best to try and entertain you. Right, I'm going to sign off now. Just before I go, Jim, Hunt's Dust is good, CDC oil is really good. I've not been a fan of CDC oil, but I have got some. I just don't like it. So, sorry Jim, don't like it. Right, thanks very much. I'm going to head home now, and I hope to see you tomorrow. I'll probably do another video tomorrow because, let's face it, I'm not going fishing. I'm not even going to work, so I might as well do something constructive. You take care, guys, and please stay safe and stay at home.